To make it easier for me to go back to my hometown after giving birth to our second child, my parents transferred me $200,000 before Memorial Day to get a new car. As the date approached, my husband told me that he had lent the new car I had just bought to our neighbors for a self-driving trip to the desert. I questioned him, and he said, "Can't you be less petty? It's not like all your family members are dead." Later, he suffered from acute appendicitis and wanted me to drive him to the hospital. I stared down at him writhing on the ground in pain and said, "My best friend took the car for a joyride. Can't you be less petty? Appendicitis isn't fatal." Early in the morning, I was busy packing the luggage for our family of 4. I took a moment to shout into the house, "Honey, Tommy, wake up. If you don't hurry up, we'll be stuck in traffic on the highway." My husband, David Lee, walked out of the bedroom rubbing his sleepy eyes and said casually, "Honey, go back to sleep. We don't need to rush." I lent the car to Ashley Schwe's family last night. They're going on a self-driving trip to the desert and are already on the highway. David Lee's voice was gentle, but it was like a bolt of lightning to my ears. I stood among a pile of luggage and gifts for a long while before my emotions finally exploded. "David Lee, are you even human? Do you know that we haven't been back to see my parents in 5 years? Tommy and Dolly were born, and my parents haven't even seen them yet. Do you know how long my parents have been preparing for this visit? My parents contributed to down payment for a car. How could you just lend it out without asking?" In a fit of anger, I was incoherent. My eyes were red, and I glared at him through gritted teeth. David Lee calmly wiped his glasses and said, "Sarah Chin, can't you control your emotions? It's just not being able to drive. See if there are any high-speed train tickets to Riverdale." I don't know how David Lee had the nerve to say He words high-speed train tickets. He knew very well that my hometown was a popular tourist city during the summer vacation. It was difficult to get tickets even if you bought them half a month in advance, let alone on the same day. I took out my phone, pulled up the ticket booking interface, and shoved the page showing sold out in David Lee's face, shouting, "Tickets! Do you know how hard it is to get tickets to my hometown? Dolly and Tommy are so young. How do you expect us to take care of them with all this stuff? Have you thought about any of this? Why don't you tell Ashley Schwe's family to drive the car back?" Faced with my questioning, David Lee just glanced at me indifferently. "If there are no tickets, there are no tickets. If we can't go back, we can't go back. It's not like it's the last time we'll see them. There are so many holidays in the future. Why do you have to obsess over this one time?" Ashley Schwe's family has been preparing for their self-driving trip to the desert for a whole month. Why should their dreams suffer because of your selfishness? I don't give a damn how long they've been preparing. Don't they have their own car for a self-driving trip? Why do they have to borrow our new car? Do you know that I haven't been back home for 5 whole years since I married you? 5 whole years. My parents transferred me $200,000 to buy a car specifically so we could come home, because they feel sorry for me and the children. Last night we were still talking about seeing them today. Now we can't go back. How am I supposed to tell them? Perhaps because I was too aggrieved, my voice was choked with sobs. My eyes were wet, and I could barely see. David Lee sighed, his attitude still indifferent. "Isn't Ashley Schwe's car not as good as our new car? If you can't say these things, then I'll call your parents." He pushed up his glasses and muttered, "I've always thought that parents contributing to down payment for a car for adult children is shameful. If I were your parents, I would donate that $200,000 to a charity, or do something more meaningful. Why make you buy a car? I've been riding my bike to work all these years, which is both environmentally friendly and good exercise. Isn't it the same whether we have a car or not?" David Lee's words completely enraged me. I grabbed his collar and started hitting him wildly. As I hit him, I started to feel dazed. How could I have married such a man? And even had 2 children with him? Did he ever think about it? He's a university professor, and our family lives in university-owned faculty housing. The apartment complex is only a few hundred yards away from the university. While he leisurely rides his bike to enjoy the scenery every morning, I have to drag my daughter, running around like crazy, to catch the subway. My movements were too violent. The son on my back was so scared that he started crying. My daughter in the house also heard the commotion and ran out in tears. "Mommy, Daddy, don't fight. Tommy is scared." My daughter Tommy hugged my leg, sobbing pitifully. David Lee quickly bent down and picked up the child. "Tommy, don't be afraid. Mommy is just being crazy. Tommy, let's try to persuade Mommy together, okay?" After speaking, David Lee took his daughter's little hand and came closer with a smile. "Don't be angry, you stingy mommy. You won't be pretty if you keep being crazy." 2. After confirming that going back to my hometown was hopeless, I packed a few things for the children and took them to the amusement park. On the way, I called my parents. After briefly explaining the situation, I burst into tears. The disappointment in my parents' eyes on the video call was hard to hide. But they still comforted me. "Sarah, it's okay. If we can't come back this time, we'll just wait for the next time. Don't fight with David Lee. He's just too kind and good-hearted." Indeed, David Lee has always been a wonderful person without any flaws in the eyes of others. He's kind and amiable to his children. He's respectful and filial to his parents. He's always generous to his neighbors and colleagues. It's the same in daily life. When I ask the courier to deliver the package to my door, he always refuses, telling me not to increase the courier's workload. When I ask the delivery person to compensate for the broken takeout, he gives them a good review and a tip. When I submit an article to my favorite magazine, he quietly withdraws it, saying that he wants to leave the opportunity for newcomers. I stayed up all night to get a spot in a prestigious preschool near our home for my daughter. He turned around and gave the spot to his colleague's son, causing my daughter to have to wake up an hour earlier to go to school. When his own mother was sick, I used my connections to get an appointment with a specialist after trying for 3 days. But he gave the appointment with a specialist to a stranger while he was just going to the machine to confirm it. The Ashley Schwe family that he lent the car to weren't even our friends. They weren't even good neighbors. The man of that family allowed his dog to pee in front of our door every day. The 2 8-year-old twin boys made noise day and night, causing our newborn Dolly to not sleep soundly all night. Once, those 2 children snatched my daughter's lollipop. I helped my daughter snatch the candy back. Ashley Schwe stood in front of my door with her arms crossed and cursed for half an hour, saying that my daughter was a vixen who was seducing their son. There have been countless frictions, big and small. But David Lee could still lend out the new car I had specifically bought to go home just because of a word from Ashley Schwe. 3. At 4 in the afternoon, I took the 2 exhausted children home. As soon as I got to the bottom of our building, I saw David Lee's younger sister, Nancy Lee, and her new boyfriend loading things into the trunk of her boyfriend's car. When she saw me coming with the 2 children, she greeted me affectionately. "Sister-in-law, you're back?" I forced a smile and replied, "Yeah, I'm back. Why didn't you come upstairs?" "No need, sister-in-law. I'm going to Charlie's house later." Nancy Lee waved at me with a smile. "My brother said you guys aren't going back to your hometown this year. It's a waste to keep these gifts, so I might as well take them to my future mother-in-law to leave a good impression on her family." The hand holding my daughter's hand suddenly tightened, and I frowned as I looked at the things on the ground. There was ginseng and deer antler that I had bought to nourish my grandparents. There were carefully selected jewelry and skin care products for my mother. There were also famous cigarettes and good wine that I had gotten for my father after asking many people for help. There were a dozen gifts in total, big and small. It cost me 2 whole months' salary. I had been saving money to buy these things. I didn't touch any of the family's savings, and I didn't spend a penny from David Lee's salary card. The big stone that had been stuck in my throat since early morning seemed to have flipped over completely, making it impossible for me to swallow or spit it out. "Sister-in-law, what's wrong? Are you feeling unwell?" Nancy Lee asked when she saw that my face looked bad. I didn't want to make a scene in front of outsiders and children, so I just shook my head with a sullen face. "It's nothing, you guys go ahead, I'm going back." After going upstairs, I put the two children to sleep. I closed the bedroom door and dragged David Lee, who was acting like nothing had happened in front of the computer, up. "Why did you give the things I bought for my parents to your sister? Didn't you say you weren't going back to your hometown? It's a waste to leave these things lying around. It's better to let Nancy take them back to meet her future in-laws, which will leave a good impression on her family." David Lee blinked, seemingly not understanding why I was angry. "Those are the things I bought for my parents. Even if we're not going back for the holiday, these things can be shipped. Why did you take my things to give as a favor without saying a word? Nancy is my sister, and she's also your sister. She's been calling you sister-in-law for so many years." David Lee frowned, still not understanding. "We're all family. Why are you always so petty?" "Petty? Do you know how long I prepared these things? How many places I went? And how much money I spent?" After speaking, I took out the purchase receipts for these things and threw them all at David Lee's head. The receipts scattered like snowflakes. David Lee, who had always been mild-mannered, suddenly raised his voice. "Money, money, money. It's just money. I'll pay you back right away. What else is on your mind besides money? My family doesn't want your things." The next second, my phone vibrated. It wasn't a transfer from David Lee, but David Lee emailing/texting the extended family group of 30-plus relatives in his family. "Dear relatives, sorry to bother you. Because I giving away gifts without permission that Sarah Chen sent to her parents, Sarah Chen is angry and wants me to compensate her. Since my salary card is submitted on a monthly basis, I don't have the ability to compensate her at the moment. Please help me, relatives, and raise this amount." That night, I received more than a dozen transfer messages from my parents-in-law and elders. Even Nancy Lee's boyfriend sent a friend request, saying that he would give me money for those gifts at a discounted price. I didn't click on any of those transfers because they disgusted me. It was clearly the things I had carefully chosen for my parents. It was clearly David Lee who had made the decision to keep me from going home. Now why was I the one who was wrong no matter what I did? After that, David Lee and I fell into a long Cold War. Until the Lei Shui family came back in my new car that was completely wrecked. The dashcam footage showed that they drove my new car all the way to the center of the desert, where they raced across the dunes with various off-road vehicles, causing serious damage to the paint. An unknown amount of sand had seeped into the air filter and exhaust pipe, greatly affecting the engine's performance. Even if it were disassembled and overhauled now, there was no guarantee that it could be fully restored. This meant that my new car, which I had just gotten less than half a month ago, had become a worthless, heavily damaged car. I immediately demanded that Ashley Shui compensate me for the depreciation and repair costs of the car. Ashley Shui naturally refused. She shouted that David Lee had voluntarily lent them the car and told them to drive it however they wanted. Now that the car was broken, it was natural for our family to repair it ourselves, and they shouldn't even think about trying to extort them. Soon, our shouting match turned into a physical fight. Ashley Shui struck viciously, and I wasn't polite either. The end result was that we were both sent to the police station. David Lee, as my immediate family member, naturally attended. As soon as he entered, he bowed to the police officer. "I'm sorry, officer, my wife has always had a bad temper. I apologize for the trouble." Then, he bowed to Ashley Schwett and handed over a thick envelope with both hands. This is to compensate you for your medical expenses and lost wages. You don't have to worry about the car, we'll take care of it ourselves. Ashley Schwett glared at him and took the envelope happily. All right, I won't hold it against you for your sake. Take your wife back, she's like a madwoman. I sat aside with a bruised lip, unable to say a word. David Lee could see, unless he was blind, that Ashley Schwett and I were mutually assaulting each other from any point of view. Even if the police ruled, we should be seeking compensation from each other. Why did David Lee take all the blame on himself with just one sentence? It was only right and proper to compensate for damaging other people's property. Why did it become proof that we were causing trouble for others in David Lee's mouth? Walking out of the police station, I looked at David Lee's back, which was almost half a shoulder taller than me, and couldn't help but fall into deep thought. In the years from when David Lee and I were dating to getting married and having children, he had always been generous, while I had been petty. It seemed like the more I cared about something, the more generous he would be. I never understood it before. But now, I understood. David Lee was generous because, in this family, he wasn't the one taking the deliveries or the takeout. He wasn't the one taking the kids to school. He definitely wasn't the one taking the elderly to the doctor. The gifts and the car weren't bought with money from his pocket either. Who wouldn't be generous with other people's money? David Lee had to force me to become a petty madwoman in order to highlight his own composure and generosity. After figuring everything out, there was really no need to continue my marriage. But before that, I had to take back everything I had lost in this marriage. 6. The next morning, I made David Lee a hearty breakfast. I hugged him with a smile and said, "Honey, I've thought it through. I've really been too much lately." David Lee was stunned, and echoed without understanding, "It's okay, everyone makes mistakes, it's good as long as you change in the future." Of course, honey, don't worry, I'll never be a petty person again. If you don't believe me, I'll prove it to you right now. After speaking, I took out my phone and called David Lee's school principal. Principal Wang, David Lee feels that the school has cultivated him so hard for so many years. So we don't want this university-owned faculty housing that we're living in now. Please give it to Myeon, who needs it more. David Lee's face went from disbelief at first to a twisted expression when he heard that I had really submitted the application to move out to the school principal. You have to know that this house was something David Lee had earned after graduating and staying at the school, working diligently for more than 10 years and publishing 7 or 8 weighty papers. Although he couldn't freely buy or sell the house that the school had rewarded him with, he had the right to use it until he retired. Even after retirement, if he wanted to continue living there, he could buy it at the lowest market price at the time. So when I hung up the phone and said to him as if asking for credit, "Honey, look how well I've changed," David Lee, who had always considered himself a refined intellectual, rarely slammed the table. "Sarah Chen, what are you thinking? Do you know how much effort I put in to get such good university-owned faculty housing? Looking at the entire school, who else is qualified to enjoy university-owned faculty housing besides me? Now you want me to give up the house. Where do you want me to live?" I blinked at him innocently. "Honey, have you forgotten? I have a 2-bedroom apartment on Maple Street. This is what I think. Since I already have a house under my name, how can I let you occupy the spot for university-owned faculty housing? You must feel very bad, but you're just struggling to support me and the children. I was too short-sighted in the past, and only thought about my own interests. Now I've changed. We definitely won't occupy any spots that we shouldn't, and I'll definitely not hold you back with my pettiness." I said a lot, righteously. David Lee's face turned red and then white, and then white and then red with anger. He wanted to continue pointing at my face and throwing a temper tantrum, but I raised my phone again and aimed the video call lens at him. Little Wang, don't worry. I'll vacate the house for you by the end of next month, so you can apply to the school with peace of mind. On the other end of the phone was David Lee's junior colleague. He wasn't well off and had been applying for university-owned faculty housing for 3 years in order to get married. After all, the number of houses was limited, and the subsidies were generous. Who in the school wasn't racking their brains to get it? If David Lee hadn't applied to withdraw, he would probably have had to wait another 3 to 5 years. Brother Lee, you're such a great guy. I really didn't expect you to give me such a good opportunity. I'll definitely make my child recognize you as their godfather in the future. David Lee's face was livid, and he wanted to refuse, but he lost himself in the junior colleague's repeated thanks in front of the camera. Watching David Lee looking like he was scratching his heart and lungs, and was in so much pain, but still had to pretend to be generous in front of the video camera, I felt great. It turned out that there were no saints in this world at all. You'll never know the pain until the knife is cut into your own flesh. 7. The 2-bedroom apartment on Maple Street was something I had bought before I got married. It was less than 300 yards away from my company. It was only separated by one road. At the time, in order to take care of David Lee, who worked at the university, and for the sake of our children's future education, I rented out the house without hesitation and moved into the University Heights, which was 10 kilometers away, with David Lee. But later, he easily gave away the spot in a prestigious preschool for our children. In order to make it a little easier to pick up and drop off the children, I could only arrange for the children to go to a preschool near my company. On the first day of moving over, David Lee woke up late. His biological clock of many years made it impossible for him to adapt to waking up an hour earlier in a short period of time. He brushed his teeth and washed his face in a hurry. He was jumping around trying to put on his socks before he had even tied his tie. He almost fell several times. I sat leisurely on the sofa, applying a face mask while watching cartoons with Tommy and Dolly. Sarah Chen, I'm going to be late. Help me call a car. David Lee shouted at me while packing his briefcase. I slowly took out my phone and opened the ride-hailing app. Looking at the routes on the map that were all red, I couldn't help but curl my lips. It's rush hour now. It's very difficult to get a car in this area. Why don't you take the subway? But honey, haven't you always ridden your bike? It's both environmentally friendly and good exercise. Why not? David Lee didn't answer me. He slammed the door shut. Once upon a time, every morning for me and the children was like this, chaotic. I had to take my daughter to preschool. Then I had to take Dolly to his grandmother's house. Finally, I could clock in at the company. It was common to arrive just in time, and it happened often that I was late and had my attendance bonus deducted. If it hadn't been for the achievements I had made in the company for so many years, the senior leaders would have probably asked me to leave long ago. But while I was in a mess, and emotionally distraught because the children wouldn't get out of bed, David Lee was brewing coffee and spreading butter, looking content and at ease. He kept telling me, "You need to control your emotions." 8. David Lee had never left the campus since graduating, nor had he entered the workplace. He had never experienced the rush hour in a first-tier city. After experiencing the despair of not being able to get a ride-hailing car at the intersection, the bitterness of not being able to squeeze onto the bus or subway, and being late for 3 consecutive days in a week, David Lee finally asked me at the dinner table on the first weekend, "Honey, you said that the car was sent for repairs. How is it in?" "Oh." The hand that was peeling shrimp for my daughter paused, and then I said faintly, "The car's engine is almost completely scrapped, and the paint also needs to be completely redone. It would cost at least 80,000 yuan to repair it. Our family doesn't have too many savings at the moment, so it would be a bit difficult to spend so much money on repairs." "Not enough money? Why should we use our own money to repair the car? Isn't there insurance?" David Lee's face visibly paled. He obviously couldn't accept this result. This is considered man-made damage, so the insurance company won't pay for it. You gave up Ashley Schwa's compensation at the time, which means that our family needs to bear the cost of repairing the car ourselves. I put down the shrimp shells and waved my hand. Honey, I actually think you're right. Our family really doesn't need to buy a car. Now I walk with Tommy and Dolly to school every day, and I can also look at the scenery along the way, which is both environmentally friendly and good exercise. I've decided to sell the car at the disposal price after a while and donate the money back to charity. Donate what? How am I supposed to get to work if there's no car and it's so far away? You moved us here without my permission. We clearly have a car at home. Why do you have to make me get up so early every day? Also, why did you say that we didn't want such expensive repair costs? Hearing this, David Lee scratched his hair in frustration. The way he bared his teeth was completely different from his usual gentle and elegant appearance. This startled Tommy, who was eating, and he burst into tears. Wah, Daddy is so scary. Daddy is so scary. Woo-woo, Daddy, don't be fierce. It's so scary. I quickly picked up the crying child and patted his back to comfort him, and my face was also full of grievance. Honey, you were the one who decided that we didn't want the repair costs. How can you go back on your word? I said that at the time because we were neighbors. Now we've moved. It's only right and proper to compensate for damaging other people's property. Why shouldn't the Ashley Schwa family pay? David Lee seemed a little exasperated, completely lacking the calm and sincere look on his face when he was lecturing me at the police station. In that case, honey, go get the repair costs back. I put down my daughter, who had stopped crying, and looked at my husband across from me with a serious expression. Anyway, you were the one who decided that we didn't want it at the time, so it's also reasonable for you to go to their door now. As soon as these words came out, David Lee, who had just been righteous, immediately became evasive. How can I do that? How can you go back on your word? It's only been a few days. Sarah Chin, why have you become like this again? Didn't I say that you should be generous and not petty? See, this is my husband. I gave David Lee a thumbs up with a face full of praise. I knew it, honey, you must have been testing me just now, right? Don't worry, I've changed my ways after the last lesson and will definitely not let you down again. 9. A few more days passed in the blink of an eye. Suddenly, there was a remittance of 85,000 yuan in my phone. David Lee's tone was urgent and smug. Honey, take it to repair the car. Tell the 4S store that I'm willing to pay an extra 5,000 yuan as long as they can repair it within 3 days. There was no need to ask. This repair money must have come from my parents-in-law. David Lee was a young master from an ordinary family. He had relied on his excellent academic performance since he was a child. He was naturally pampered at home, which naturally made him otherworldly. How could he withstand such beatings and experiences all of a sudden? In addition, my time off work and the delivery time of the courier happened to be staggered during this period of time. So David Lee had to pick up all the deliveries at home, and David Lee also had to take takeout. David Lee suggested sending the courier to the front desk of my company, but I said, it's not easy for the couriers. They have to run 2 blocks for one courier, so it's okay for us to take a detour. If David Lee raised any further objections, I would return the words he had said before to him verbatim. It looked like this guy had finally couldn't bear it any longer and went to cry to his parents. A week later, David Lee, whose new leather shoes had been stepped on in the subway, returned dejectedly. He collapsed on the sofa tiredly. Honey, hasn't the car been repaired yet? Why is it still so slow even after adding money? I stopped scrolling through my phone and said slowly, the car hasn't been repaired. I gave all the money to Nancy Lee. She said before that she and Charlie were looking at houses and were just short of 80,000 yuan. so I just transferred it to her directly. After all, she's my own sister, and it'll be easier for her to live with her in-laws in the future if her family helps her more. I knew that as soon as I said this, there would definitely be a big uproar tonight, so I sent both children to my best friend's house in advance. Sure enough, the moment I finished speaking, David Lee broke down. He overturned the table, smashed the glass, and was hysterical like a madman. "Sarah Chin, you bitch. Who told you to give this money to Nancy Lee? Did I ever tell you that that money was for you to repair the car? Did I ever tell you? What the hell do I care if Nancy Lee buys a house or not? I don't give a damn if she can't get married and ends up a slave to her in-laws her whole life." David Lee was at his most frantic. I quietly unlocked the security door. Standing outside was Nancy Lee, who had brought her parents and boyfriend to express their gratitude. Every word of David Lee's crazed rant reached their ears. Nancy Lee's face fell. She had always thought her brother adored her. He had never argued with her over a single bite of food growing up. She had genuinely believed he loved her. But here she was, arriving with her parents and boyfriend, full of joy, only to hear her own brother cursing her in such a hysterical way. "David Lee, what do you mean? I'm your sister. What's wrong with you contributing some money for my wedding and a house? Does everything have to be a calculation in this family?" After all this time, David Lee was exhausted. The facade of being a good person he had so painstakingly maintained shattered completely in that moment. "Calculating? Do you even know that money was given to me by our parents? Everything in this house belongs to me. What right does a girl like you have to covet my money?" The room fell into an eerie silence after David Lee finished speaking. His in-laws were also from highly educated families. They were shocked by their carefully nurtured son's sudden transformation. They had always prided themselves on treating everyone equally, never favoring sons over daughters. They couldn't understand why their usually respectful and obedient son had turned out this way. His mother couldn't help herself and slapped David Lee across the face. The argument erupted again. The whole family was pushing, shoving, and hurling accusations. All pretense of decorum, so carefully maintained by this supposedly highly educated family, was gone. As an outsider in this family, I naturally didn't participate in their war. I just sat aside quietly watching a video my best friend had sent. It showed the two little ones smearing cake frosting on each other, looking adorable. 9. That night's argument ended with the neighbors calling the police. The final result was that David Lee's parents-in-law took back the $85,000 for the car repair. Nancy Lee broke up with her boyfriend of 3 years. He calculated all the expenses incurred during their relationship over those 3 years, including the market value of all the expensive gifts I had bought for my parents-in-law relatives at the time, and returned the equivalent amount. As for me, I officially filed for divorce. In court, I presented video footage from the hidden cameras in the house, showing David Lee throwing things and acting hysterically every day since we moved in. I requested the court to revoke his custody rights on the grounds of his mental instability. When it came to dividing the assets, David Lee refuted every item the judge read out. His mind was quick, and his rebuttals were well-reasoned. When it was my turn, I only said one thing: "I'm divorcing you for the healthy upbringing of our children. No matter what, we are still family. Why be so calculating with family?" I knew David Lee had been regretting his irrational behavior that night. Hearing me say that, he immediately assumed I was just temporarily angry and that I would eventually take the children back and live with him again. So he didn't hesitate to interrupt the judge's statement and, in front of everyone, gallantly chose to give up all assets in the divorce. He even increased the alimony from my requested $5,000 a month to $8,000 a month. The divorce proceedings had reached a point where even the experienced judge found it strange. The judge's gaze towards David Lee changed. And this change, in David Lee's eyes, became the judge's admiration for him. After the divorce decree was issued, David Lee invited me to a farewell dinner. I smiled and waved goodbye, saying, "I won't be joining you for the farewell dinner. I have another lawsuit to fight later." My other lawsuit was against Ashley Shwe and her family. The claim was for the car repair costs, depreciation costs, and the overpaid compensation. The dashcam footage clearly showed that my new car was maliciously damaged by Ashley Shwe's family. And the police report from when Ashley Shwe and I had a dispute clearly stated that we had engaged in mutual assault. The facts were clear, and the evidence was conclusive. The judgment came quickly. Ashley Shwe was ordered to pay me the requested repair costs and depreciation costs, as well as half of the compensation, within 10 days. Ashley Shwe took off her shoes and started making a scene in court. After the judge warned her 3 times without effect, she was directly sent to jail for contempt of court. Ashley Shwe's husband, a civil servant, was afraid of getting a stain on his record. He quickly transferred the car repair costs to me and filed for divorce from Ashley Shwe. 10. After the divorce, I quit my job and sold the house. I took the 2 children back to my parents' hometown. I became the full-time writer I had always dreamed of being. Every day, I woke up naturally. When I woke up, my favorite breakfast was always on the table. One of the little ones was sent to school by Grandma, and the other was taken for a walk by Grandpa. Life went by peacefully for about half a year. The alimony that had always been reliably deposited before the 10th of each month disappeared this month. I called David Lee, but his phone was turned off. After some inquiries, I found out the truth. It turned out that David Lee had been unhappy ever since our divorce. He had originally thought that my filing for divorce was just to scare him. He never imagined that I would actually take all the assets and the children, sell the house, and return to my parents' home. After confirming that there was no possibility of reconciliation between us, David Lee didn't want to pay alimony anymore. But the court judgment clearly stated that he would be punished by law if he didn't pay alimony. After reluctantly paying alimony for a few months, he received a wedding invitation from his university junior colleague, Charlie. Looking at the mocking red wedding invitation, he was filled with rage. In David Lee's eyes, the beginning of all his suffering was Charlie's shameless move into the university-owned faculty housing that should have belonged to him. Now he was sad and separated from his children. He could only live with his parents in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment. And the culprit who had taken his house was happy and fulfilled, having won the heart of a beautiful woman. Enraged, he tore the wedding invitation to shreds and attacked Charlie. While hitting him, he kept shouting for Charlie to return his house. David Lee had never been in a fight before. In the chaotic shoving, he accidentally broke Charlie's thumb. Charlie immediately had a medical examination done, which confirmed that the injury met the standard for minor injury. David Lee was sentenced to 3 months in prison for intentional assault. A video of David Lee fighting someone at the university was posted online. The impact was too severe. The university immediately decided to suspend David Lee after he was released from prison. David Lee was reduced from a respectable university professor in a big city to an elementary school teacher in a remote small town. After learning about this, I contacted his parents immediately. I said that if David Lee was really having financial difficulties, I could appropriately reduce the amount of alimony. His parents on the other end of the phone started blaming me as a matter of course. "Isn't it enough that you've already taken so much from our family? My son is already in this state, and you still want him to pay alimony? Are you trying to force him to his death? Anyway, the children are with you now. If you can raise them, raise them. If you can't, send them to an orphanage." Always calculating, with your mind full of money, no wonder my son couldn't live with you and divorced you. After hanging up the phone, I didn't argue or make a fuss. Instead, I directly filed a lawsuit with the court, demanding that David Lee continue to pay alimony according to the original judgment. The previous written agreement was exceptionally clear, and the court was also aware of the current situation. Although David Lee's salary level after his release from prison was far lower than in the past, his family's assets were still sufficient to cover the $8,000 a month in alimony. Therefore, the court immediately ruled to uphold the content of the original judgment. After the court ruling took effect, his parents sold their hometown house and directly paid the alimony for the 2 children until they reached the age of 22. On the day of the transfer, they deliberately stood in front of me wearing slightly worn clothes, as if waiting for my pity to kick in so I would generously wave my hand and let them take the money back. But I knew very well that their retirement pensions were very generous. Even if David Lee went to teach in elementary school, he would still have a stable salary. Although Nancy Lee broke up with her boyfriend, she was still an employee at a large company. Their lives may not be as respectable as before, but they were not impoverished. Therefore, there was no need for me to compromise on what I was rightfully entitled to. As a person, striving for one's own legitimate interests is never calculating. Moreover, it is not shameful to be calculating for oneself. What is truly shameful is being a moral exemplar who generously gives away what belongs to others in the name of generosity. A black sports car was parked on the side of the road. The car window opened, revealing Quentin Lang's reserved and indifferent face. I was a little surprised. I hadn't seen Quentin Lang for 3 years since Shanghai had won several awards. He waved at me. My new movie Rebirth is missing a lead actress. Will you take it? The little assistant covered her mouth and giggled, pointing to the flowers on the passenger seat of the sports car with sharp eyes. Sister, Director Jones giving an actress a bouquet of flowers means he appreciates her, but giving 2 bouquets is extraordinary. And he has never used the same lead actress in 2 consecutive movies before. Your luck is still to come. Her voice was not low, and Quentin Lang heard it without refuting it. He slightly raised the corner of his mouth and handed me the flowers directly. Will you take it? I couldn't help but smile and reached out to take the flowers. I will. Forget the past, embrace the new life, my future, all the way with flowers.